Hello everyone and welcome to PlateUp. In this tutorial episode, we're going to be going over the different map types as well as some of the different dishes, and we may touch on the workshop. So if you've seen part one, you understood the basics of how to load a game up, how to set up your menus, your inputs, etc., etc. Now, the next thing you do, once you set all that up, if you have friends join, which will be in their little windows over here, their little rooms, or you're doing a solo game, the next thing to do is to choose what dish you want and to choose the map that you want. Now, for a solo player, I prefer using what I consider a diner map. And it's called a diner map because the big white squares represents what's considered a countertop that you can reach over. So it's more so like a half wall. You can't place anything on it, but you can reach right over it. And then the little things that look like door icons, which if you follow my mouse are right here and right here, those are your doors. You have one door leading out of your restaurant, and that's where the customers come in and come out. And you have one door typically that'll let you go into each different room. Now, there's no limitation. If you're following my mouse, there's no limitations on setting up your kitchen here and serving here, or flipping it around, or doing it all in one room. That's the beauty of this game, is there's so much customization to it. Now, nonetheless, that is what's considered a diner map. For solo play, I really enjoy those type of maps. Everything's real compact. You have a big window countertop area where you can place tables, etc. So that's this one. This one's a little bit different because you see the door placements are a bit different. The entry door as well as the door to get into the other room. These start with one table only. You have your city maps, which are one step bigger. As you can see, they're a little bit bigger if you count the tiles. These are 6 across. These, I believe, are 8 across, 2, 4, 6, 8, or 7 across. These typically you will start with 2 tables. These are what we consider a small map. And then here you have a larger map where you will start with 3 tables. This is considered a medium to large map. Again, this one is very interesting. If you follow my mouse, you see it here, you only have a little area here for your pass-throughs. Your door to get in, and here you have to go through 2 doors to get into this area. So typically, as this is rotating, of course, let me see if I can get to stop, you'd set up your kitchen in this area, and you'd have your serving down here. Because the people have to come in here, and then they can eat here. If you're serving in here, people have to make their way all the way through these doors, which is possible. You just have to have a clear path for them. And then, of course, this is the same difference here. This little room, you could put coffee tables. You could serve in this room, but again, here you're limited with 2 pass-throughs. Now, one thing that's great about the game is wherever there's a door, not an exterior door, interior door, if you place an object on one of either side of this door will turn into a pass-through where you can access things, you can pass people things. Now, you have to remove it to walk through the door, if you're following my mouse here, but this will turn into one of these type squares, which I will show you guys once we get into a game. Now, that's the maps. As I said before, if you go into your tutorial, this was in part 1, tutorial, you interact on it, you hit enter, you go in here, you don't actually have to do the tutorial. You hit escape, you go down to leave, you double tap, and now we're gonna go back to the map selection, and the maps will be different. Some of them may look similar, but they are procedurally generated, so there's no set map, again, unless you use a seed, which I discussed in my previous video. Here we have a country map, and then country just basically dictates the setting of it, which is the background, how it looks. If you're in an alpine location, which none of these are, you'll have snow instead of rain. In the country, I think you have rain, you have nighttime, and this is just affects things like the customer's patience while they're sitting outside. It all makes sense as we get into doing a run. Now here, look at this. This is another one of a diner style. This is an odd layout. This would be a very difficult map to play on, right? This one here, again, this one's not bad for a solo player, even for 2 people. And then here's more of the same. Let's re-roll one more time to see if we can unlock a giant map. And again, since they're procedurally generated and they're random, you don't know what you're going to get. So the tutorial, as of now, this is a great way to reset your maps. And look at that. I think we have some bigger maps down here. Let's take one more look at the maps. That one can have an area where a bunch of pass-throughs if you put a table or something where the door is. Same thing with this one's quite similar to that, just some of these are a little bit different. This is another smaller country map, and then here is a medium size. So we don't have any of the giant maps or the big ones which start with 4 tables. These ones here will start with 3 tables, this will start with 2, and then your diner map, which we don't actually have, will start with 1 table. And you may say, well, what's the difference between starting with 1, 2, 3, or 4 tables? Well, how quickly you can serve. If you have 1 table, you have to serve clean dishes, serve clean dishes. If you have 2 tables, 2 people could be at the restaurant at once. This will make more sense once we get into the actual playthrough of the game. Now, the second thing, once you choose a map, let's just say we're going to choose this country map. The next thing is to choose your dish. Now, when you do the tutorial up here, it resets these as well as these. So if you pick a map and you do the tutorial, this will be reset to something else. So keep that in mind. Typically, once you find a map that you like, you then choose whatever dish you have to go with it. Again, as I mentioned in the part 1, when you start the game, you will only have 2 slots open, just like you will only have 2 choices of maps. The tutorial up here will work the same, but you only will ever have 2 choices until you level up. The information to the wiki I will place in the description below. That has tons of information that's been compiled from all the playtesters and a lot of the people that are in the Discord, the PlateUp Discord. So make sure you head over to the wiki in the description below to get a lot more in-depth information at your fingertips. So the dishes we have burgers, we have pizza, we have fish, and we have pies. As I mentioned in part 1, you can see how to cook this. You click this up, you place it up here in your test kitchen. It changes to what dish that you, this is the basics. This is what you see in this room is what you will start out on day 1 if you go and you start a run. No matter what size map you have, you're going to have 4 plates. You're going to have whatever the meat or vegetable dish is. You're going to have an auxiliary, which this is flour. You're going to have a cooking device if it requires cooking. And you have a bin down here, which you can't see. You have a sink, and you will start with some countertops. Some maps you'll have 5 or 6, some you'll have 2, some you'll have 10. It all depends on how the map generates. But this is your starting. And to make a pie, you grab this. Actually, you know what? Let's look at the recipe. It tells us, need flour or add water. So, the way that works, let's just do this as we go. So kneading flour, you pick it up, you interact, you place it down, and you interact with it. You have to interact with it 2 times to make a pie crust. Or you interact, you come down here and you tap the interact button on the sink. Not the put down button, the interact button, which for me is O. It turns it into a dough ball already, and then you only have 1 step to do. So there you go. If you're next to a sink, it's easy to grab this, interact with this, and then you save yourself a step. But if your sink is far away, it can be done just by this. Now, for instance, this is pies. Well, it says need flour or add water to create dough, then knead into a pie crust, which we did. Add meat and cook. Now, you can add meat one of 2 ways. You can pick it up, you can place it inside. Again, this is using the P button for keyboard. Or you can pick it up with P, you can come over here and you can tap it with P. The meat puts itself in it. So it saves a step. You're grabbing this, you tap it on that, you put it in the oven. The next step would be to put it in the oven. Place it in, you interact, shut the door. You see the green bar at the top. When it turns to yellow in the exclamation point, that means it is done. And you need to take it out. If you don't take it out, it will burn. And again, you interact with it again, you pick it up, and there is your served pie. Now, of course, everything must be plated, because it's called PlateUp, of course. So again, you can grab a plate and come over and interact with it this way, or you can grab the finished pie and just tap on it to have a plated pie. So that's the basics of how to do, well, how to use this little test area. But I think it's time to get into a game. So I'm going to roll I'm going to do a tutorial to refresh the maps for everybody. So we're going to come down here. We're going to do the tutorial again to reset the maps. We're going to hop right into a game. Let's see. One of the dishes that you're going to start with is going to be steak. So I'm not a fan of steak myself, but it's one that you start out with, and it's best to do the steak. Now, look at that map. Look at this map. These are big maps. City map. City map. I think for argument's sake, we're just going to do this city map. It's good enough for demonstration purposes. Actually, you know what? I've been speaking highly about the diner style map. So you know what? Let's do the diner map, which is this one. I'll show you exactly what I mean when I call it a diner map. This being the weekly is irrelevant to this tutorial. We have pizza, which is a little bit more advanced dish. Stir fry is quite advanced because it requires a lot more ingredients, a lot more actions to produce one dish. Steak is pretty easy. You just steak, and then breakfast is a little bit more involved because you actually have to bake bread and then slice the bread. The steak, you're cooking steak. Steak and fish are the easiest ones because you basically pick up steak, you pick up fish, you put it on a hob, you cook it. This is what it will look like. As soon as you place the dishes on here, see how it says complete the plan to begin? You're completing the plan. You have a menu item and you have a layout. So you come down here. Here is where you could choose to take items with you. When you first start out, you will have nothing here. You have to level up and unlock this area to unlock more things you can take with. So I have things like a freezer, a dishwasher, wash basin. And if you want to pause the video as I'm going over any of these, feel free to read the description. For instance, a wash basin, it says pile them high and wash them clean. Wash basin washes up to 4 plates at once but cannot provide water. Water is important for things like we showed you above with getting the dough or making soup. You need to have a regular sink for that, which again, the game will always give you the game will always start off by giving you what you need to complete your dish, no matter what you bring with yourself or your group. You have things like a dishwasher, automatic, activate to clean up to 4 plates at once. Dishwashers are nice, but you have to load them. You have to then wait for their cycle, and then you have to unload them. So it could be quite slow, but it's very hands off. You have something like a power sink. Power sink. When normal amounts of water aren't enough, power sinks are great because they're very fast. It doubles the water icon there. That droplet is washing. It stands for washing. Double your washing speed, but cannot provide water for recipes, similar to this. So you have to have a regular sink for that. But this is very good if you're going through dishes very fast. This, of course, is slower. This upgrades into this. We'll get into upgrading quite a bit later on once you start doing a run. And you have things like your hearties, your upgrade kits. I have a combiner, which is a quite advanced item that you get, which we will get into, of course. And you have your plant, which gives you a bonus to patience, which again, we will get into as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to load up a game. I'm not going to take anything. We're going to load up one game. I'm going to go over the basic setup. And some people may say, you know, this game is a lot like Diner Bros, a lot like Overcooked. And it is because it's a cooking game, but it's completely different. And you're going to see why right now. Again, when you load up the game, it tells you what dish you're going to have based on what you chose, how to cook it, and it gives you a tip. Recipes can be viewed anytime in the pause menu, which we're going to hit P on this to accept. The pause menu is hitting escape. And it gives you the same options as it did on the mainstream, except you could abandon the run, which means if the run's not going well and you think you're going to fail, you can abandon it. Or if you're playing it and you had enough, you want to start over. You don't have to quit the game because that'll exit the game completely. You can hit abandon. It'll reset, go back to your main menu, which we were just at, and then you can choose again. Active cards is what we're going to talk about as we play, which will be in the next tutorial. So far, we only have one active card, and it's steak. And it's steak base. Add steak as the main dish. Cook steaks multiple times to match the order. And then you also have your recipes, which is just the other option. Steak. Cook steak once for rare, twice for medium, and 3 times for well done. You may say, well, how can you do that with a burner? I'll show you guys in 1 second. Anyway, this is what happens when you spawn in the game. Now, if your options under game say drop letters inside is off, that envelope that's floating and flickering at the bottom of the screen will spawn outside. If you turn it to on, which we're going to do, I'll show you what happens when we get through day 1. So you come out, you always will start with your basics, which I'm going to get into as soon as your booking desk, you always hit. And now you interact on it with O, and it tells you right here, interact to accelerate time to the next customer. It also brings in more money, which again, we will touch on as we go. You interact with this, you have to hold down your interact button until you pick it up, and now it's complete. And again, this is what you start out with. I'll actually set this out here just for demonstration purposes. Every map that you play will start off with the same basic items. And those basic items are going to be tables. This map, you'll start with 1 table. You can start anywhere between 1 and 4 based on the map type you have. This is 1 table. And again, this game, you can pick everything up with your pickup button, which means you can pick up everything in the game. You can pick up everything except things that are bolted down in a sense, like these pass-throughs and the doors. You can't pick up this, you can't pick up this door, but you can pick this up and place it where you want. I'll place it here for now. Okay, the next thing is you have your countertops. Depending on the map that you chose, it'll dictate how many countertops you have. You don't know how many you're going to have until you actually load the game up. But for here, we have 1, 4, we have 7 countertops, which is actually very good. You will start off with a blueprint cabinet. A blueprint cabinet is used to store, tells you right here. Right here. So you hold L on it, which is my lightning button. Place a blueprint here to store it for later days. We'll get into that in the next episode as far as what blueprints are and what they do and how you can save them or upgrade them. We will get into that in the next episode. But for now, let's set up our kitchen. So that's that. The next item is plates. You start off with 4 plates. Provides 4 plates. They're called starter plates. This whole setup, your hobs, which are cooking devices, your sink, your bin, and your plates are all sort of starter items because they all work a little bit different. This, you start off with 4 plates. The main plate stack has 10. Just to keep that in mind for reference, because you will go through plates very quickly. The next thing you start with, of course, are going to be your main things for cooking. For us, it's going to be steak. Provides meat. Pretty simple. If this was pies, you'd have this plus the flour. If this was fish, you'd have fish bins, etc., etc. Let's set this to the side. The next thing you have is your sink. This is a starter sink. It cleans slower than a normal sink. Power sink, wash basin, or dishwasher. It's slow, but it comes with the restaurant. So it's free. Next is your bin, your starter bin. So if you make a mistake, which I'll show you about making mistakes when we start to get to cooking, you have to place it in a bin. So your bin will fill up because this holds 2 items. The main bin that you can purchase later on stores 4 items, and then you can upgrade that to a compact bin, to a recycle bin, etc., etc. So that's the bin. The next item that we have are the hobs. You will always start off with 2 hobs as a starter pack, and they tell you they have a 0.75 times the flame icon is cooking speed, or cooking, if you will. So this has a 75% cooking rate compared to a normal hob, which is 100%. Again, it cooks slowly. It cooks slower, but you get 2 of them to start off with. So if you're cooking steaks, you can put 2 steaks on. You got to keep an eye on them, though. Okay, so that's that. Now, basic setup. Now, this is where different people, everyone has a different way of playing. In the tutorials that we're going to be going through together, you're going to be seeing my way, and I'm going to be explaining to you why they're a good way and also why they are a bad way. Or I should say more so the positives and the negatives. So for me to set this map up, I'm going to show you how to do it, and I'll try to talk my way through it. Because we have steak, I like to put the steaks at the top. Because we have hobs, you can put the hobs here. You could actually use 2 hobs. I typically don't use 2 hobs for this, but we can use them to show you what that's like. And again, with this game, you can pick up everything that is not bolted down, which is considered the door, the pass-throughs, the main door. Everything else you can pick up and you can move them. At the end of each day, you have a prep phase, which we're in preparation day 1 as it shows in the top right corner of the screen. Now, I will jump over to this little flower icon. This is your seed for this exact run. So if you like the run, if you like the cards you get, if you like the layout, if you like how it plays, you put that seed into the seed pot from the previous screen there. We chose everything, and it'll give you exactly the same things, exactly the same map. If you choose the same dish, it'll give you exactly the same cards. So that's a way to keep getting better and better to perfect a certain way or a certain dish, to perfect how to do steaks. If you mess up and you like the map, you go and do the same map over and again. Otherwise, you just pick a random map. Anyway, we have the countertops. We also have plates. I like setting my plates up like this. And I will tell you why I like doing that. Because your plates are here, your table's here. You have the plate from a hob like this. You serve it, you pick it up, you wash it, you plate it back. Now again, could you put the sink up here? Of course you could. Could you put it over here? Of course you could. Now, one thing with setup, if you place a sink in the dining room, and it is within 2 tiles, see we have one, if it's within 2 tiles, you place it here, you're fine, because there's 2 full tiles in between. Within 1 tile, you have this icon, the water icon, and what that says is increased mess, which means that's the mess that the customers make, which again, we'll get into in the next episode. They are messy. So it's a good idea to keep your sink. The door fights you sometimes, but eventually you'll phase through it. There. The other thing that does that is the bin. You put the bin out here within 2 tiles. It has a fish, which also increases the mess. So you don't want to have your bins out there. The next thing that will affect your people is cooking devices. This has the flame icon. The flame icon decreased. It looks like a knife and fork with a plate. And that is your eating patience, which we will get into as we continue on. But basically, when you serve one person and they're waiting for the second dish, if you have two people, this is your patience decreaser for that. Okay, up here you go. Now, again, we don't have much to go off of. So for a solo game, I would probably, I would probably even set this up a bit differently like this. And to replace one thing that's on the ground, you hover over it, you hit the P button, which is the place button, and it replaces what you have. I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to put this here. Now, you may say, well, you can get stuck on this. So there are two ways to do this. One is you leave it. So if you're walking, you get stuck on it, and you can grab it like this, and you come back out, etc., etc. Or one of my methods is you turn this sideways, and you can slide across things by holding up and left and right. Only if you're on a joystick, it'd be the same thing. You'd be pointing your up and to the right, up and to the left. Or you can spin it completely around to the back, and you can slide across it. Now, you miss the visual, of course, but we know what's in it because of the icon on the top. It is meat. Well, it says meat, but it's steak, basically. Your hot dogs and your hamburgers will come in a similar refrigerator like this. It'll just have a hamburger or hot dog icon. So, but for me, I like to turn it just so I can slide. And that's just a tip of myself. Again, you have countertops, have knobs on them. You can turn them. It doesn't affect anything except how they look and also the way dishes are displayed. Because there is an up. There's an up, there's a down, there's a side to side. If one of these is turned this way, one's turned this way, what I place on here will look different on here as far as the orientation. Typically, it doesn't matter, but for things like burgers, you want to have it oriented a certain way so you can actually see the toppings that you put on a little bit clearer. But for us, we can just do it like this. It doesn't really matter. The blueprint cabinet we cannot use, so there's no point to have it anywhere where we have access to it. This is where you put your blueprints in it. So that is basic setup. Now, again, the reason why I have this set up like this is because I can have a table here, I can have a table here, I can have a table here. I can have 3 tables in this restaurant very easily without changing my layout. Now, some people run things up and down, so you basically would have the hobs like here, here, and here. You'd have your sink over here. You'd have tables here. Again, the beauty of this game is you develop your own play style, and you figure out what works for you and what is fun for you. Anyway, we're going to actually, the last thing I want to touch on before we move on to the next episode is your trash can. If you have something you don't want, like a countertop, you could leave it outside at your preparation day, and the trash can means it'll just go away. Or you could place it, this is just showing that there's an icon there, what that means. At the end, when you start your day, whatever's outside that has that icon will disappear, and you'll never be able to get it back. So you want to be careful getting rid of things like countertops or sinks, because you may end up needing it later on the run, and you don't want to have to buy those. The last thing is practice mode. Practice mode, if you interact on it, lets you practice how to cook your dishes, or it practices how to do your automation without actual customers. You get a real life scenario. The only thing that practice mode doesn't do is give you dirty plates, except now it does. And the reason why is I'm going to show you very quickly. We're not going to play a run. I'm going to show you why. You hit practice mode, it asks you yes. You're going to have cats that come into the restaurant. Where are they? There they come. The cats act as your customers to test you. So while we're actually testing it, you have a thinking phase, which is what they had over their head. This here is their waiting phase. And you see the icon. If you follow my mouse here, it starts off green. As it gets lower down, it'll turn to a yellow, to an orange, and it'll start blinking when it gets dangerously close. What this is an icon, a bell icon. This is an icon that represents that they're waiting for their order to be taken. They come in, they sit down. You interact by hitting the O button. You'll hear a ding. Oh, excuse me. The ding is gone. There's no ding. Excuse me. You hit O. It tells you what they want. And this here is your waiting phase, or your eating phase in a sense. And this goes down slow based on, if you follow my mouse, based on what buffs you have, what cards you have. Some are positive, some are negative. This will go down very fast, or it'll go down very slow. This tells you what they want. So you cook it. Again, following my mouse around, I'll use my keyboard instead. You cook what they ask you to, and you serve it, and then they'll leave. But we're not going to be doing that because we can go right into a main run. When you're done with the practice mode, you just hit K or escape, and it brings you right back to here. And this is a good way, once you start getting into automation, to test your automation before the customers come. Because you may set up a whole run of automation, and you have something turned the wrong way, and you start the day, and you fail to run because something isn't turned the proper way. We will get into all of that as time goes on. Thank you very much for tuning in to the basic setup of choosing your map, choosing your dish, a little bit of your workshop, and how to set up a restaurant. And like I said, this is how I set up my restaurants. But I feel it's a very good, a very easy way to start off with when you're a new player starting with a diner map. Set your sights small. Once you master small, then go to medium, then go to large, then go to giant. Because if you jump right into a giant map, it's very difficult because everything is also pulled very well back on the screen. I like these maps because everything is nice and close for me. Anyway, stay tuned for part 3 where we'll start a day. We'll go over how to cook a dish and potentially get to day 3, look at a new card. We'll also see the blueprints that pop on the ground, the envelopes, etc. We'll talk about what this up at the top of the screen is for, as well as everything over here. Stay tuned for part 3. Thank you guys for watching. Take care now.